Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll be talking about Lightning Message Service. Okay, so what is Lightning Message Service? So it is basically a publish and subscribe service that will establish a communication between different kind of components. For example, you can establish communication between LWC or a components and Visual Force pages, right? So in this specific video, we'll only talk about LWC components. So if you remember the sessions from the previous videos, right, we talked about how a parent can communicate with the child component and how a child component can communicate with the parent component, right? But then we had a third communication type wherein we had to establish the communication between two unrelated components. That means the components which do not belong to the same hierarchy. They are not related to each other via parent child relationship or a or any other kind of hierarchy, right? So two components which are totally different and independent of each other. How we can establish communication between them, how you can pass the data from one LWC component to another LWC component, which are totally independent of each other, right? So here we will be using Lightning Message Service. Okay, so I will tell you the basic steps that we would need for this communication to get going. Okay, so the first step would be to create a message channel. Okay, and then we have to publish that message channel in the publisher component, and then we have to just subscribe to that message channel in the subscribing component. Okay, so these are the three basic steps. Of course, there's a lot in these three steps, and we will see, like, how we can achieve all of it. So don't worry about it, we'll go step by step and then we'll figure out how to do it. Okay, so the first thing is that how to create a message channel, correct? So to create a lightning message channel, you would need to have a lightning message channel metadata type. Okay, so what you have to do is, if you remember that when you create a project, it creates a folder hierarchy, right? Force app, main, and default. So you have to create another folder which would be under default, and that would be called message channels. And under message channels, you have to create your message channel meta file. Okay, and basically in your message channel meta file, you will be defining all the fields or any kind of, like, basically whatever message you would want to send from one component to another component, everything has to be defined into your message channel meta file. Okay, and this is the syntax for the message channel meta file. So you will name it whatever you want to name it, and then it should be dot message channel hyphen meta dot xml. Okay, so this is how the structure is going to be for message channel meta file. Okay, so before jumping on to publish and subscribe method, let's just go ahead and start creating a message channel. Okay, so I will switch on to my VS code, and then we can, like, get started. So I've opened my Visual Studio Code and we'll go and try to create this directory which we just talked about. Okay, so I'll right click on the default folder, and then I'll click on new folder. And what was the name that we had to give? That was message channels in camel case, right? So message channels. Okay, as I've already created this, it will not allow me to create, but this is how you guys can create this directory, right? This folder under default. So once you give this name, and you have to give this name as it is, right? You cannot modify it as per your choice. So you have to give it exactly like this, message channels. Okay, so I am not going ahead and creating this, and I cannot because I have already created this. Okay, and if I show you the folder, right, I already have created a file. And how I've created the file, I have given a name, and then after that name, after dot, right, whatever I have given here, that is part of the syntax. Okay, dot message channel hyphen meta dot xml. This is how you have to define the file name. So under this, you have to right click and create a file. Okay, and once you create that file, this is how you have to give the name. Okay, so I have given the name as update counter because it is something related to the example that we would be doing today. So let's just go back to the slide, and I want to explain you that what we will try to achieve here. Okay, so Here it is. So we will be creating two LWC components. The first one would be the publisher components, and then the second one will act as the subscribe component. Okay. So we will plan to pass the data from component one, that is the publish component, and we will receive the data into the subscribe component, that is component B. So here, if you can see, it's pretty clear that what we will try to do. I will have three buttons on publisher component, right? Add, subtract, and multiply. Okay, and whatever I pass, right, let's say whatever user clicks, if user clicks on add, then I want to update the value of the counter. Okay, I want to make it as 1, right? If the user clicks on add once, if he clicks again, then I want to again update it. I want to make it 2, right? Every time it will increase by the number that I have given, right? If I would have given here as 2, then it will, every time it will add number 2, right, to the current value. And similarly, like, it will act for subtract and multiply. If I click on subtract, then whatever the current value of the counter would be, it is going to just -1. Okay, and similarly it will work for multiply. Whatever the current value is, then it will, when the user clicks on multiply, it is just going to multiply the counter value with 2. Okay, so if you observe, then what and all are we passing from the publish component to the subscribe component? Two things, right? The first thing is the operator, right? The operation that you want to perform, either it could be addition, subtraction, or multiplication, right? So that is the operator, add, subtract, or multiply. So that becomes your first set of information that you want to pass. The second thing that you would be passing is the number, right? By how much you want to increase, decrease, or multiply, right? And that numeric value would be nothing but, you can call it as like, constant or something as value. Okay, so there is two set of information that we would be passing. The first one would be operator, the second one would be constant. So what we have to do is, in our message channel, we would be creating two fields, the first one for operator and the second one for constant. Okay, so let's just go ahead and create these fields in our message channel file. Okay, so this is my message channel file, right? So this is just the skeleton. So this particular piece of code, either you can copy paste, or if you want to write, you can write it down, right? So under this, we would have to create our fields, right? So before creating the fields, this particular tag, right, lightning message channel, it has some default tags, which if you want, you can fill it in. For example, master label. Okay, master label, you can give any name to this particular file, so that later on when you have a look at it, you will understand for what purpose you created it, right? Okay, so I'm just giving it a name as, and then we also have to expose this. Okay, so X is exposed, and let's just make it true. There's another tag called description, but I'm not filling that in right now. Okay, and then the field that we have to create, that will come under lightning message fields. Okay, lightning message fields. Okay, so under lightning message fields, what you have to do is, you have to give the field name, right? And what field name we wanted to give, we had two sets of information, right? The operator and the constant. So the first field that we would be creating, that would be for operator. Okay, and then let's just copy this and paste it, and here I would give it as constant. Okay, and then my message channel file is ready. To this fields, you can also add description, right? But I'm not adding it. If you want, you can. But this is the basic information that you would have to pass. You have to pass the information that you want to publish, right? And in my case, the example that I am doing, from the publish component, I want to pass operator and the constant, right? That is what that I want to publish with the help of this message channel. So that is what I have created here. I have created two fields, operator and constant. So let's just go ahead and deploy this. What happened? Let me deploy this file. I think the folder is already deployed. Master label invalid. What happened to the master label? Okay, I believe this has to start with this deploy. Okay, So now we have deployed a file. What is the next step that we should be doing? We know that we have to create two LWC components, right? One would be the publish component, the second one would be the subscribe component, right? So let's just go ahead and create two LWC components first. Okay, so yeah, here it is. So let me create uh 1 second, something which because I want to keep them together. Demo pub, this is my publisher component, and then I will create one more. Okay, uh demo sub. Okay, subscribe component. So these, yeah, both of them would be together, right? And let me close this one. So the first step, if you go back to the example, what we had to do, we had to create three buttons, right? So let's just create this structure first, right, in the publish component, and then we'll see that how we can move on with the JavaScript file. Okay, so let's go to the demo pub. Right here, what I wanted to do is, let's just create a lightning card. Okay, lightning card, and title pub component. Okay, and then in this lightning card I would be creating three buttons, right? So lightning button. Okay, and then in the lightning button, what and all do I need to pass? I need to pass the label, and I need to pass the event, right? That on click, what should happen, right? So let's just quickly give it label. Label should be what I wanted to give, add, and then +1, right? This is the label that I wanted to give. And what else? On click, right? What should happen on click? So on click, let's just call a function. So let's say handle addition, right? And then here, and let's just copy this and create other two buttons, right? Okay, tract -1 and traction. And then here, let's just give it as, I'm not like, giving any class or something like that. If you want to style it, you can. So this is going to be like, it's not going to look very good because there'll be no space, no styling. It will just look a little clumsy, but you will understand. Multiply. Okay. So these are the three buttons. And now let's just go to the. So before we get started on the JavaScript file, let's just go back to the presentation and we can have a look at the steps that we have to perform in order to use the publish method over here. Okay. So I'll go back to the presentation. 1 second. Okay, here. So the first thing that you have to do in order to use the publish method is you have to import message channel scoped module from LWC component. Okay, so this is how you will be importing it at the rate Salesforce/message channel. Because if you don't import it, you will not be able to use the publish method. Okay, so that is step one. The second thing is that you have to make use of the wire method, and you have to pass a property naming as message context. And this will now the question is that what is message context in here, right? Because this publish method expects three parameters. The first parameter would be the message context, the second would be the message channel, and then the third parameter is the message payload, basically the data that you want to pass, right? So this first parameter, which is message context, is nothing but um, basically it will, the moment you use this message context as the parameter, right, it is going to create a message context object for you that will basically store the data. So for example, let's say in your message channel, right, the message channel file that you have created, the meta file, what and all are you passing? You're passing operator and constant, right? So let's say when user clicks on multiply button, right, so what constant are you passing? You're passing 2, right? So where will that get stored? That will get stored in the message context, right? So we need that information in order to make the publish method work, right? Otherwise the message context will not have anything. Basically it needs the data, right? So these are the steps that you would have to do. Now let's just go back to the JavaScript file and start working on it. Okay, so here first I will because as I said, right, we would have to use the where method. So let me just first import that, and then what and all we have to import, we have to import the publish and the message context, okay, from the message service. So what will I do? Import, and then in import, what I need publish method, and then I also need message context, okay. And then from where I will be getting this? I will be getting this from the message service, okay. So here lightning, here it is, lightning message service, okay. And so okay, so now we also have to import our message channel file that we have created, right? So because the publish method would ask for the message channel that you have created, right, from where it will pass the information. So import, and then I can give any name, let's say counter file or something like that, okay, counter file. And then from what am I importing here? I am importing the message channel, okay. And the syntax for that is at the rate, and I have to start with Salesforce, okay. And then message channel, uh, I was thinking it will start showing up, but it is not. Okay, message channel, and then whatever the name I had given to the message channel, what was the name for my message channel? It was uh counter. No, let me just scroll and check. Update counter, right? Update counter. And every time, like whenever you are importing the message channel meta file, right, after the name you have to include underscore underscore c, right? So this is the syntax, you would have to include it, otherwise it will not work, okay. So now I have imported all the files, or like, whatever I needed. Now we can get started, okay. So the first thing that I told you, right, that we have to make use of wire adapter to get the message context object, right? So let's just do that, wire, and then what will pass? Message context, okay. So here I will just receive it into this message context, okay. So I received it here. Now what do I have to do? If you guys remember, I have created like, there are three buttons, right, on the HTML, and on every button click I have called a function, right? So let's just go back to the HTML and see what and all functions are. So for example, handle addition. So let me just write in all these functions, and then we can type all of it. Handle subtraction, okay, and then handle multiply, okay. So here it is, okay. And now what do I have to do? So guys, remember that the publish method will take three parameters, right? The first was the message context, which we already have here, right? Message context. The second parameter would be the message channel name, that also we have here. The third parameter was the payload, right? So we have to create the payload, correct, in order to pass it to the message channel, sorry, publish method, we have to create the payload. And so in your message channel file you have defined operator and constant, but then what value would be there in operator and what value would be there in constant, that you have to define, right? That we haven't created, right? So we have to create the payload here, right? So I am just going ahead and creating the payload. You can give any name, whatever you want. I'm naming it as payload, okay. And then what and all do I need to pass? I need to pass the operator and constant, right? Operator, and so in operator I'll pass this, and then there will be a comma, and then I need to pass the constant, okay. And in constant, because in addition I just want to increment it by 1, right? So I'll just pass 1, okay. So this is my payload for addition, right? Let me just copy it and then mm, paste it here. This is subtract, and again by by 1 I want to subtract. Here let me give this, and this is multiply, and I want to multiply by 2, right? So this is my payload, right? And one second, let me just check everything. Okay, so we have the message context, we have the payload, and we also have the message channel file imported here, right? So now what we have to do is we have to publish, right? So how we can publish? We have to, here, let's start with this, and it has to end with a semicolon, and here I will use the publish method. Okay, uh, publish method, and what and all will it take? The first parameter that it will take would be the message context, right? So message context, and then what was the second parameter? That was the message channel, right? So message channel, and then I will be passing the payload, right? This payload that I have created. Okay, and here, and then this, and this is going to be same for all of the methods. Okay, because we have all the information that we want. So sorry. Okay, and then okay, so this is our publish component, right? If you guys want, we can just go through it again. So what we did, we just imported publish and message context, and then okay, so the first step is that we knew that we have to make use of publish method, right? And publish method takes 3 parameters: message context, the message channel file, and the payload, right? So in order to get the message context, we had to make use of wire adapter and pass the message context, because that is how we will get the value, right? Whatever is passed from the message channel file. Okay, so we will make use of the wire adapter method, and then we will also create the payload. Okay, so once we have the payload and we have the message context and we also have imported the message channel file, we have all the 3 parameters, then we can use the publish method and we can pass these 3 parameters. So that is all which will be there in your publish component JS file. Okay, so we have the HTML file, we have the JavaScript file ready. Now we will go to the component B, right? The subscribe component, and we'll see that how we can receive the value which is being published from the publish component. Okay, so let's just go to the subscriber. So in the HTML, I would first define the counter value that I wanted to display, right? So let's just create a lightning card, and I will give the title as a subcomponent, right? Subcomponent, sorry, subcomponent. And here what I want to do is I wanted to give counter, right? And because it's a number, let me just take lightning formatted number. Where is number? Here it is. Okay, lightning formatted number, and I will take the value as, for now, let's just give a name such as, let's keep it counter. Okay, counter, and then okay, so this is what I want to display on my subscribe component, right? I would want to display the counter value. And so, like, in the JavaScript file, when we will subscribe for the message channel, when we'll get the value, right, we will set that value to this particular property, right? So that, like, we'll be able to display that on the HTML. Okay, so now let's just go to the JavaScript file. So before we get started with the subscriber component, right? Subscriber components JS file, let's understand first that what and all we need to implement here. Okay, so the way we were importing message channel in the publish component, the same way we have to import the message channel in the subscriber component as well, right? Because we would want to use the subscribe and unsubscribe functions, correct? So the first thing that you would have to do is you have to import the message channel scoped module so that you can use subscribe and unsubscribe methods, okay? And then the second thing that you would have to do is you would have to use the wire adapter, right? So that you can create a context object that will basically provide information about the Lightning Web components that are using the Lightning message service, right? So we would have to write in the wire adapter, and we will pass the message context as the parameter. And then we would have to declare a property called subscription, okay? Because before we use the subscribe method, okay, we have to implement another function which is called subscribe to message channel, okay? And you can only implement that message like basically you would have to first check if the subscription is null or not. So that message that functions implementation depends on this properties value, okay, subscription value. If this is set to null, then that method will be executed, subscribe to message channel. And when that is executed, you can basically call your subscribe method, which in return will pass the message to handle message. And then in your handle message you can write your logic. I know it's a lot to take in for once, at once. So let's just go ahead and start implementing step by step, and then you will understand better, I believe, because this way you will not you will lose the track. So let's just first import the wire method because we know that we would need it. Okay, and then we also have to import subscribe, right? Because in publish component we were importing publish and message context, right? Here we would be importing subscribe and message context. Okay, so subscribe and message uh, context. Okay, so this is done. And then we also have to uh, and here I believe the name small c, right? Update counter. So let me, because we also we would need this message channel, right? We need to import it. So we did it. And now if you guys remember that we have assigned a value here, right? On the counter, right? So we would need to initialize it, right? And initially we will set it to 0, okay? When the components load, when the component loads, okay? So this is set to 0. And then we also talked about subscription property, right? That you will only be able to implement subscription to message channel function with by checking this particular property. If subscription is null, then only you will be able to implement that. So let's just define another property, subscription, and we will initialize it with null. Okay, so this is, and then what we have to do is we have to implement the where method. And what we will pass in the where method? Message context, right? So that we will get a message context object. Okay, message context. So this, we got this. Now whenever your component is loaded, right, you would have to call your subscribe to message channel function. Okay, so connected callback. Okay, so this will basically called when your component is loaded. Okay, so and then which method do we have to call? We have to call subscribe to message channel. Okay, subscribe to to sorry to message channel. And this function will always check if the subscription is null or not. Okay, so on the connected callback, when the component is loading, I am calling this method, but what is there inside this method, we don't know, right? So let's just define this method. Okay, so subscribe to message channel. And then we will have to call the publish method, right? So let's just first see that what and all. So this will first check your subscription value. Okay, subscription value. Okay, and then what you can do, as we had discussed, right, that you will have to, when the moment your component is loaded, right, you have to call this method, and this method, inside this method, it's gonna check the subscription value, and then based on the value, if it is null, it is going to, you can basically call your subscribe method. Okay, so here we will call the subscribe method, and we will pass all the three parameters. What are the three parameters? The first one is, what is the first one? Message context, right? And let me initialize it with a small. Okay, so this is my message context. Okay, and my second parameter is nothing but my uh, this file, right, the file that we have, the message channel file that we have imported, correct? So I will just copy this and I will pass it here. Okay, now the third parameter would be my handler, right, the message which was published from the published component, right, that message I have to receive in a handler, like, in a handler function. Okay, and then after that I can call that handler function, and then I can like, write my logic, like, whatever I want to do with those data, right? So what will I do here? I will get that. I mean, you would have to basically use an iterator, sorry, arrow function. Okay, so I will name it as anything, like, what, but this is nothing but the message that you're getting from the publish component. Okay, so here this dot, and here I will define a function. Okay, handle message. I can understand that this would be a little difficult to understand, but all you're doing is that in the third parameter, right, when we were using the, on while working on the publish component, we had three parameters, right? Same parameter, only the third parameter was different. The first one was message context, the second one was the message channel file, and then the third one was payload, right? Now that payload is already published, so you need to receive that payload and then, like, manipulate the data, or like, write a logic, whatever you want to do, right? So that's what we are doing, because this is the subscribe method, and here you are receiving that, like, data, and I will just, like, define a method here, and I will pass this data, and then later on I will call this method and I will write in my logic. Okay, so let's just go ahead and, like, we will also define the, I mean, let's just go ahead and implement this particular method. Okay, handle message. So in handle message, what do we have to do? We know, we already now know that what and all would be coming in message. In message I would be getting the value, right, like whatever I have published, right, whatever I have published from the published component, the same thing I would be getting inside the message, right? So the message should have, like, the fields that I had set and sent from the published component, correct? So that is what we have to implement here. So what will I do? I will handle message, and then what am I, like, what I was getting here? I was getting here message, right? And then here I would have to just see, like, if my message dot, what were the fields that we had? Operator, right? Operator is equals to add, right? I mean, I would have to just define that, like, for all the three buttons that I have, right? So for all the operators, I would have to write in the logic that, like, based on what operator, what should happen. So if it is add, then what should happen? I have, if you, sorry, 1 second, I had some other keyboard selected. Okay, so if you see, we have this counter value, right, which is initially set to 0. So what would I do? If the operator is add, I am going to increase the counter with what? Plus is equals to, and then with what? With the constant, right, that I would be receiving from the publish component, right? So, and then here it is, right? So if my operator is add, I am just, whatever the constant value I'm receiving, I am going to add it to the counter property, right? So, and then the same way you have to write the logic for subtract and multiply. Okay, so what would I do here? Let me just copy this. Okay, and um, else if it is I think the spelling, okay, if it is subtract, then what I would do, I will minus it, right? And then else, if it is multiply, then I would have to multiply it, right? So I defined like, I defined the logic for all the functions, right? Sorry, for all the operators, that like, if the operator is add, then what I would be doing, if the operator is subtract, then what I would be doing, and if it is multiply, then what should I be doing. Okay, so now I mean, we are done with the subscribe component as well. Now let's just save the code and deploy everything to org and then see how it behaves. So first of all, let me change the meta files. Okay, and then I will use it on the record page, save, and let me also paste the same thing over here as well. Okay, so I will deploy my publisher component, and then I will also deploy my subscribe component. Okay, and I believe I have already deployed the message channel, but let me check again. Deploy. I'll try to deploy the folder one more time. Okay, so let's just go to the org, and I would have to log in. I think it would have logged out. So give me a minute. And let me remove this. And demo pub. This would be my publisher. And let me also call demo sub. Okay, and let me keep it here. The counter. Let me save it. Okay. See, it's the moment I'm clicking any button, right, from the publisher component, the value is getting received on the subscribe component, and it is behaving as per the logic that we have written, right? If I subtract -1, if I let me add 1, and then okay, there might be some like, small mistake into this, might be the spelling or something, but as you can see that this is working perfectly fine, right? So here there might be some something which we would have like, made some spelling mistake or something like that. So this is how you can basically use lightning message service in order to establish communication between two unrelated components, right, which do not belong to some hierarchy. Okay, I hope if you guys did not understand properly, I would suggest you to watch the video again and take a pause and then like, observe wherever you think that like, you are not understanding things. And I believe that you will get it at least like, in 2 to 3 times. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next session. Bye bye.